Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am Abe with mysticgenmara.com, a small town mystic from the middle of Idaho. And my lighting tonight should give you an indication of where we're going as far as who we're talking about tonight. But we'll start off with a little bit of crochet chat for a second. Coming up in probably this next week or so, I have a handheld loofah that you can put on and put your liquid soap if you use that, and use it in the shower. These things are really cool. I've been testing one just before I holding up quite well. They're made 100% cotton wash and it will shrink it down. Otherwise, on the website mysticgenmara.com. So tonight I wanted to talk about a more mythological person, one that is surprisingly becoming a lot more popular as the years pass. This is the opposite of Santa Claus, and some of you may have heard of him before, and his name is Krampus. This little guy right here, over here in the corner, peeking in the door there watching St. Nicholas with everybody. So, Krampus is a horned goat, human, possibly demon hybrid. Typing is not always the greatest when I'm doing these things, and if I don't put it in now I'll forget to do it later because I keep records of everything that I do so I don't duplicate. Krampus has a unique set of skills. Instead of handing out gifts and goodies like his nicer counterpart St. Nicholas, Krampus preferred to smack kids with birch rods. And I'm not kidding, that's what that's the origin of this particular little story. It is said that Krampus comes from pre-Christian traditions. Some of the older traditions date him back to sometime in the early 100 BCs, or 80s, sorry, good grief. So, 1500 years or so ago. And from my research, it is mainly the mountain towns in Europe is where he got his origins. It's spread to quite a bit of Europe, but that's where the origins of the story come from. And one of the traditions says that the young men of the village, 18 through 25-ish, would dress in horned costumes and parade through the towns trying to scare people. And this lore seems to have primarily come from Germany first, and then spread to Austria and some of the other countries after that. It is said that the legend of Krampus comes from a story from the Norse god of the underworld, Hel, because it's like, okay, we have the god Hel, H-E-L, not the other one, but I couldn't find out who his mother was, so if you happen to know that lore, drop that in the comments, please. Krampus has many forms. Their own version, their own vision of what Krampus looks like. But there are some basic similarities or characteristics that are fairly universal. He's usually very hairy, black and or brown hair that covers most of his body, and they're very specific in the lore, because I was wondering if it was like a fursuit type thing like you would see with Sasquatch or one of those. But every single reference specifically stated hair, so it's not fur. It doesn't sound like it's soft. It sounds like it's more coarse. And this covers almost all of his body. There's, depending on the story, which country it is, some of them say he's completely furred up the whole way, haired up the whole way. Others say like around his face and upper shoulders it's not as hairy, but there's a lot of hair there. We'll just go with that. He has a forked tongue, fangs, and horns, which is an interesting description. And then you think about some other traditions that use those descriptions. It's kind of like the Christian devil. Maybe this is where they got their story, because what they depict as forked tongue, fangs, and hooves and horns doesn't quite match up with anything that's in the biblical record, so who knows. But the cloven hooves just top this whole thing off. And there are depictions of Krampus having a tail. Some say it's a long tail, kind of like a lion's tail. Others say it's more of a horse tail. But suffice to say, there are depictions of Krampus with a tail. Most of the legends say that Krampus can be heard before he appears. And he's heard because he carries chains. In the Christian version, or their way of trying to stamp out Krampus, he carries the devil's chains that bind him to hell. Voluntary or not, he loves to rattle his chains at people. And he does this to scare them. Be really quiet, creep up, and then ching, 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 ching. I mean, you hear rattling chains and most people get creeped out anyway. So, there could be some reasons for that. In some versions of the tale, his chains have bells on them, commonly seen as the old sleigh bells, the big ball sleigh bells that were usually brass or silver. And as he rattles his chains, these little bells would chime, and that combination, I think, would be terrifying just in general. So he carries something very specific, and this is one of the reasons that I find Krampus a little bit fascinating and a little bit horrifying. He carries what is called a root, R-U-T-E, which is a small bundle of birch branches bound together. With this root, he swats at disobedient or bad children. Santa would leave coal, Krampus would leave welts. In some traditions, an actual whip has been substituted for the root, swat at them, or he would cart off the worst of the children in a reed basket or a bag, generally assumed to be burlap type bag. And the lore says that he would either drown, which is a little horrifying, eat, not sure which is worse, or plunge these vile children into hell, because, you gotta pay for your crimes, and you're being a horrible person, so you have to do what you have to be corrected, is basically what's going on here. Sorry, my phone is having a moment. Okay. It just kept vibrating. I wasn't sure if someone was calling me or not. Some sources say that this might actually have been an ancient path for initiation, because the origins of where he or why he shows up is a little bit of a mystery. But the fact that he shows up and is so prominent in these towns, and what started off kind of in a small region and then spread to other towns. But some of the more modern theories on it is it may have been an ancient path of initiation, taking away the bad children for training and initiation into some sort of secret group. It could have been a priesthood, it could have been a lot of different things. And if that's the case, what would their training end up being? And that's the one that I'm curious, and I want to know where they got this idea and why they think that. Because you specifically cart off the bad kids, and the way it's the section that I found that talked about this being an initiation is that they would be taken away, trained, and then when they were brought back, they were actually better kids or teenagers. In a lot of cases, the time frame was 10 years or so. So what kind of training are we talking about, and what did they come back as? So, something to think about. And if you guys have heard of this before, and you know the initiation practice, this thief of the night that does this kind of thing, let me know, because I am curious as to why they do what they do. In Europe, wherever they celebrate Krampus, the holiday tends to fall on December 5th, the day before the feast of St. Nicholas on December 6th, which is kind of an early celebration of Yule. This night is called Krampus Night, or, and I'm gonna murder this, I already know it, Krampusnacht. And it's the titles tend to be Germanic in nature, so Krampus sometimes walks with St. Nicholas during either the Feast of St. Nicholas or Krampusnacht, Other times he walks by himself or shows up on his own day completely, while St. Nicholas is handing out gifts to the good kids and the businesses. A lot of the modern celebrations have these guys wandering through the streets handing out gifts and goodies to the good people. Krampus is handing out coal and chasing people with his root. So it sounds like it might be actually kind of fun, just a little bit of a twist on the old holidays, or on the new holidays that were once way older. It is said to get on Krampus's good side during Krampusnacht, one would offer schnapps, which, if you don't know what that is, it's a strong fruit, generally fruit-flavored brandy, although you can find it in peppermint and a whole bunch of other flavors now, but it's originally a fruit brandy, a fruited brandy. And by the end of Krampus night, Krampus could be quite toasted, and this led into the celebration of the Feast of St. Nicholas. So you'd just be kind of setting up the party and then just going at it after that. So it could be kind of fun, but there's always this touch of fear, a touch of scary tied into all of the Krampus celebrations. It is the traditions. There are traditions that say that Krampus brings the root as a gift to the parents. And I thought this was fascinating because I've got some parents I'd love to give a root to. As a gift to the parents of the naughty children. The root was to be displayed in the home at all times, year-round, to remind the children that Krampus was real and would return if they didn't improve their behavior and studies. Krampus doesn't like dummies, apparently. He wants the kids to be good, and this is... There's some... start over. There are some theories that the studies aspect of it was because the Christians wanted their kids to be smart, but it goes back further beyond that, because Krampus, if you were lazy at your trade training, he would visit, and that was pre-Christian belief. So your behavior was a part of it, but also your studies were a part of what Krampus would come to remind you of what you're not supposed to be doing. There are practices in some countries, Croatia and its neighbors, that state that Krampus is a devil-like creature wearing a loincloth and, again, the chains, and devil-like still horns, hooves, all that fun stuff. And interestingly enough, St. Nicholas would arrive first at the households and bring the kids gifts and goodies and a branch. And I thought this was fascinating, and I would love to, if and when I ever have children, this is something that I would probably do just because it sounds fun. A gold branch says that the children were good and studious. They were able to keep all of their goodies and have their candies to themselves. But if a silver branch was left, this was not a good omen for those children. The silver branch meant that Krampus would be along shortly, and he would take all of the presents, eat all of the kids' candy, leaving the silver branch as a reminder that you did not do the right things this year and it's time to improve. So, do you get a gold branch or a silver branch this year? Just something to think about. And like I said, can you imagine how how much of a to me it would be funny. It'd be a little devastating to the child, but also, dude, get your grades up. There's no reason to be failing class, especially in the 1st through 8th grade. But you've got that silver branch, just having that branch like stuck on the mantle, knowing that that was because you didn't do good in school or fill in the blank. There's a little bit of me that's like, shame isn't bad, but that reminder would just eat at you, knowing that that was sitting there. So, like I said, there's a little bit of me that finds that amusing. And, I mean, it would be a definitely reminder to do better in school, that's for dang sure. In some of the more tourist trap areas, especially around Austria and Germany, Krampus is made out to be a bit more comical, a bit more humorous, a lot less scary, and kind of like more like, whoops, this guy over here. And in pop culture, Krampus has shown up in many Christmas and Yule practices for quite a long time in Europe. They are starting to spread to North America. I've been hearing more and more about it as the years have gone on. The first time I heard the term Krampus was back in, well, we will just say that it was before 2000. We won't go into further. But it was just something you heard about. It wasn't something that you knew much about. It was just a name. It didn't mean anything. But in the 2000s, I started learning more about it and starting to understand the concept behind it and kind of the practices, which the practices aren't anything different than what I've described. It's just where you're at as to the intensity or level of chaos that may ensue. But in the more European areas, Krampus is a very prominent figure in Christmas and Yule gift cards. Like we send Christmas cards here in the States, you'd send Christmas cards, but you also sent Krampus cards. And they are starting to spread to the States as well. And I have links in the description. They're affiliate links, so if you click through those, it does help support the channel. For different cards, there's even, in some places, they're starting to do Krampus ugly sweater contests and parties. So there's a sweater down there too I found that I thought was kind of just simple ugly, not intense ugly. If you're a crafter, knock yourself out, because I can imagine how entertaining some of these sweaters could be. There's different parties starting to pop up. I mean, America loves a party. All Krampus themed of some form. So they are starting to become more popular in this country as well. He's also been featured in movies and stories a lot over the last 20 years or so. I've linked my 2 favorite movies in the description. This one is strictly Krampus. This is a tale that, it's kind of almost like a sad tale when it starts off, because this kid really wants to have the perfect Christmas, and his mom's sister, I think it is, somehow some relation is coming over to the house, but his mom is this really OCD, anal retentive. Christmas has to be the most perfect thing in the world, nothing can be wrong. But his grandma is a little old German woman who loves to do everything from scratch, and this whole concept of perfect Christmas doesn't make sense to her. So he writes out a Christmas wish to Santa. And his cousins show up and mock the ever-loving heck out of this kid, to the point where he almost kills his Christmas spirit. And that's the start of the movie. So if you like a little bit darker twist, because this one does get pretty intense at points, and it does talk about the chains and the bells, and it brings it all into perspective. The ending of it, though, it's one of those things that you'll always, it'll catch your attention, and you'll always have that, like, wait a minute, what just happened type feel to it. It's worth the watch. I personally love it. It's I have this stack of movies that I watch at Christmas, and only at Christmas. This one gets watched like 3 or 4 times in that time period because it's that good to me. The other one has, oddly enough, a cameo, so to speak. Not a cameo, but there's an actor in here that y'all may know from other things. But this is the first movie like this I've seen him in, and I have to say I was impressed. And that is William Shatner is in this movie. And it is a Christmas horror story. It follows 3 different storylines, 3 or 4 different storylines throughout. But William Shatner is playing a DJ at a radio station. And they're talking about different things, and then he plays music in between his chatting. During the music, you go to one of 3 different stories. The stories seem very individual, very unique. Don't quite understand how they all tie together. And then the last 20 minutes of the movie happens, and everything falls into place. So it's worth the watch. It's, again, they're scary. There's this one especially is has some gory scenes in it. So if you're sensitive to that, just a heads up. If you just like a good kind of campy, scary movie with some gore, you can check either one of these out. The Krampus one is less gory. It's just more psychological. There's some twisted stuff in it, but it's not like super bloody. But if you're interested, you can check those out. I highly recommend both of those ones. There are a ton of them out there. I've got 4 or 5 other ones, and let's just say that if you're going to do independent films, at least get a good camera. Just a good camera. They're like $200. Get a good one. Because there's a couple of the other ones that are indie films, and they couldn't get the zoom to work. You could tell, like, when you're watching the film, I'm horrible at editing movies, but you can see what you're not good at in other things, and they're not good at editing videos either. So, but something to think about if you enjoy those type of things. Most of the Yule cards that were from back in the day were actually a little bit on the scary side. There was not really a warm and fuzzy Krampus theme to them. Most of them said greetings from Krampus or Krampus is coming for you. But there were some, and I found them during the beautiful era of the pinups, that were a little bit more, let's just say there's another form of devil going on here. But that's these kind. And there are a few places I found, most of them got a little more racy than something I'll promote. But like these, they're just kind of fun, more like, oh, Krampus is not after just the kids. But there were some fun things like that when I was digging through some and researching this. And if this one seemed a little bit not up to my usual, I had another one planned out to do today. And last night, as I was wrapping some things up for that one, I had a very strong urge that this was the right one to do, Krampus, versus the other one. So I had footnotes already, or some notes started already, and then I just pulled everything together because it's like, for some reason I felt like this was the more appropriate one. And then tomorrow is Krampus night. It's when they do the Krampus run, and that's when Krampus is roaming around making sure that your kids are doing the right thing. So be safe out there. I hope you have a great month of December. Have fun on Krampus night. Don't get too... might want to stay home that night. We'll just go with that. With that, I will let you guys go. Have a great rest of your evening and the rest of the week, and I will talk to you in a future video.